The massive display screen in Earth Repair Station Alpha lit up with warnings as something big emerged from hyperspace. Tom Miller, the station chief, nearly spilled his coffee when he saw the readings. The object was huge, at least 3 times the size of the largest human cargo ships. Everyone to their stations. He called out across the control room. "We've got something big coming in." Through the station's observation windows, a sight unlike anything they'd seen before appeared. A ship that looked like it was made of pure crystal, catching and reflecting the light of Earth's sun in thousands of rainbow patterns, was slowly moving toward them. But even from a distance, Tom could tell something was wrong. The ship's movement wasn't smooth. It jerked and drifted like a wounded animal. "Sir," called out Bill from the communications desk, "they're sending a distress signal. Universal translation coming through now." The voice that came through the speakers was calm but held a note of worry that seemed to cross all species barriers. "Earth Repair Station Alpha. This is the crystalline vessel Eternal Light. We request immediate emergency docking. Our systems are failing, and we have heard that humans can fix anything." Tom couldn't help but smile at that last part. In the 50 years since humans had joined the galactic community, they had gained quite a reputation. Not for having the fastest ships, or the most advanced weapons, or the fanciest technology. No, humans had become known for something much more practical: their ability to fix things that nobody else could. "Eternal Light, this is Station Chief Tom Miller. You're cleared for emergency docking at Bay 12, our biggest bay. Sending guidance coordinates now." As the crystal ship drew closer, the control room staff gathered at the windows, watching in awe. The vessel was beautiful, even with its obvious problems. Parts of it pulsed with inner light, while other sections remained dark. Occasional sparks of energy danced across its surface. "Look at that technology," whispered Amanda from engineering. "That's got to be at least level 8 tech. We're barely at level 4. Tom nodded but wasn't worried. He'd seen this before. The most advanced civilizations often struggled with basic repairs because they'd forgotten the fundamentals. Their automated systems handled everything until those systems themselves broke down. The docking procedure took almost an hour, much longer than usual. The crystal ship's control systems weren't responding properly, and they had to guide it in almost manually. When it finally settled into the massive repair bay, everyone let out a breath they hadn't realized they were holding. "Right," Tom said, straightening his standard-issue repair station uniform. "Time to meet our guests." The welcoming area outside Bay 12 was designed to accommodate various alien species, with different atmospheric chambers and gravity settings. When the ship's occupants emerged, Tom found himself facing 3 tall, semi-transparent beings that seemed to be made of the same crystalline material as their ship. "Welcome to Earth Repair Station Alpha," Tom said, speaking clearly for the universal translator. "I'm Station Chief Miller. What seems to be the problem?" The tallest of the crystal beings stepped forward. Its form shifted slightly as it moved, internal lights pulsing in what Tom had learned was a sign of distress in crystalline species. "Our gratitude for accepting us, Station Chief. I am Navigator First Class Ray." The being's lights pulsed faster. We are embarrassed. Our ship is of the highest quality, using technology perfected over 10,000 years. But something is wrong, and our diagnostic systems cannot identify the issue. We have visited 3 repair stations of more advanced species, but none could help. Tom kept his face professional, but inside he was grinning. This was exactly the kind of challenge his team lived for. "Don't worry about the embarrassment. Everyone's ship breaks down sometimes. Why don't you tell me what's happening, and we'll figure it out together." Ray's crystalline form seemed to relax slightly. "The ship's quantum matrix is experiencing cascading failures. Power fluctuations, navigation errors, structural integrity warnings. But all our automated repair systems say there is nothing wrong." Tom pulled out his old-fashioned paper notepad, something that always surprised alien visitors, and started taking notes. Sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to forget what you think you know and start fresh. Let's begin at the beginning. As he listened to Ray describe the problems, Tom was already thinking ahead to which team members he'd need for this job. This would be interesting. Exactly the kind of challenge that had made Earth's repair stations famous across the galaxy. After all, humans might not have the most advanced technology, but they had something better. The ability to think outside the box, learn from mistakes, and never give up until the job was done. The first day of inspecting the crystal ship brought more questions than answers. Tom stood in the main repair bay with his lead engineer, Mike, staring at the readings from their diagnostic tools. None of them made any sense. "It's like trying to read a book written in smoke," Mike said, tapping his scanner in frustration. "Every time we think we understand something, it changes." The crystalline ship towered above them, its surface occasionally flickering with internal lights. Their alien visitors, Ray and his crew, watched anxiously from an observation platform. The ship's quantum technology was so advanced that it might as well have been magic to the human repair team. "Let's try something different," Tom suggested. He pulled out his old magnifying glass from his toolkit, a real glass lens, not a digital one. The other engineers tried to hide their smiles. Tom was known for using what they called his antique tools. As he walked slowly around the base of the ship, Tom noticed something interesting. In certain spots, the crystal structure didn't reflect light quite right. He marked these spots with small sticky notes, another primitive tool that always made aliens scratch their heads, if they had heads. "Mike, bring me the basic stress scanner," Tom called out. "Not the quantum one. The old one we use on space station windows." Mike raised his eyebrows but brought over the simple scanner. It was technology that was practically ancient by galactic standards. Just a basic tool that measured physical stress in transparent materials. The scanner's display lit up immediately. Well, Tom muttered. "Look at this, Mike. We'd been so busy looking for complex problems that we missed the simple one." Ray floated down from the observation platform, his crystalline form shimmering with curiosity. "Have you found something, Station Chief?" Tom nodded. "Your ship's basic structure is cracking. Tiny breaks, smaller than a hair, but they're spreading through the crystal matrix like a spider web." "Impossible." Ray's form pulsed with disbelief. "Our crystal technology is perfect. It cannot break." "Nothing's perfect," Tom said gently. "Everything can break. Sometimes being too perfect is the problem. There's no flexibility, no give. When stress builds up, something has to give." He pointed to one of the marked spots. "See here. Your quantum systems are working perfectly. That's why your diagnostics show nothing wrong. But the physical crystal structure underneath is developing stress fractures. It's like having a perfect engine in a car with a cracked frame." The other engineers gathered around, starting to understand. The aliens had built their ships to be quantum perfect, but they'd forgotten about basic physical stress. Their advanced technology masked the simple structural problems until they became too big to ignore. Can you fix it?" Ray asked, his voice carrying a mix of hope and doubt. Tom scratched his chin thoughtfully. "We can, but you might not like how." He walked over to his workstation and pulled up some old files. Really old files. "Back on Earth, before we had molecular repair technology, we fixed cracks in glass and crystal using a combination of pressure, heat, and special resins. It's not pretty, but it works." Ray's crystalline form flickered in what Tom had learned was their version of shock. "You want to use adhesives on a quantum crystal ship? Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Tom said with a smile. "Your quantum systems are too advanced for us to mess with. But crystal is crystal, whether it's a windshield or a spaceship. The basic physics hasn't changed in a million years." Mike was already pulling up the old repair manuals on his tablet. "We'll need to modify the process for space conditions, and the resin will have to be reformulated for quantum crystal." "This is highly irregular," Ray said, but Tom could hear the desperation in his voice. They'd tried everything else. "Tell you what," Tom said, "let us try it on a small section. If it works, great. If not, no harm done, and you can move on to the next repair station." Ray's form pulsed slowly, their version of a thoughtful nod. "Very well. But I must ask, why do you keep these primitive methods when the galaxy has such advanced technology?" Tom smiled as he started gathering his tools. "Because sometimes you need a hammer, not a quantum spanner. Simple problems need simple solutions." As the repair team began their work, Tom couldn't help but feel proud. Humans might not have the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but they never forgot the basics. Sometimes, that made all the difference. The repair bay hummed with activity as Tom and his team prepared for their first repair attempt on the crystal ship. They had converted an old glass repair setup into something that might work on quantum crystal. It wasn't pretty, a mixture of advanced tools and what looked like car repair equipment. But Tom had learned long ago that looks didn't matter if it worked. "Testing chamber ready," Mike called out, checking the seals on their makeshift repair booth. They had built it around a small section of the ship's outer hull, where one of the worst cracks was spreading. Ray and his crystal crew watched from a safe distance, their forms flickering with what Tom now recognized as nervous energy. He couldn't blame them. To them, this must look like trying to fix a quantum computer with duct tape. "All right, let's walk through this one more time," Tom said, gathering his team. "We're going to treat this exactly like fixing a cracked windshield, just on a bigger scale. The principles are the same. Clean the area, inject the special resin, cure it, and polish. Except we had to modify everything," Mike added, holding up a container of their new repair resin. "Normal resin would melt in quantum fields. This batch took us all night to get right." Tom nodded at their youngest engineer, Pete, who had actually come up with the resin formula. The kid had remembered something from his grandfather's old repair shop about mixing resins with metal powder to make them stronger. Somehow, that old trick had led to a breakthrough with quantum materials. "Beginning pressure test," announced Amanda from the control panel. The chamber around the repair area started to glow as they carefully controlled the temperature and pressure. This was the tricky part. They needed to get the crystal just warm enough to accept the resin without disrupting its quantum properties. A soft blue light began to shine from the crack in the crystal, something none of them had expected. Ray moved forward quickly, his crystalline form bright with alarm. "Stop that light. It means the quantum matrix is becoming unstable." But Tom held up his hand calmly. "Look closer," he said. "The light isn't spreading. It's contained just to the crack. That's exactly what we want. The quantum field is actually helping us by showing us where to put the resin." Ray's form settled slightly, but he still watched with obvious worry as Pete carefully began to inject the modified resin into the crack. The blue light seemed to pull the resin in, making it flow exactly where it needed to go. "Well, that's new," Mike muttered, making notes. "The quantum field is actually helping distribute the resin. It's like the ship is trying to heal itself, just needed the right materials." For the next hour, they worked carefully, injecting the resin bit by bit. Tom kept one eye on their instruments and another on Ray, who had moved so close to the repair chamber that he was almost touching it. The alien's crystalline form was rippling with colors Tom had never seen before. Finally, Pete stepped back. Resin injection complete, starting the curing process. They all watched as Amanda activated the curing lights, modified UV lamps that they used for standard repairs. The resin began to harden, changing from clear to slightly iridescent as it bonded with the quantum crystal. When the lights turned off, there was a moment of complete silence. The crack was gone, not just hidden. The crystal looked perfect, as if it had never been damaged. Ray moved even closer, his form almost pressing against the chamber walls. This is impossible. The quantum field readings are perfect. The crystal structure is fully restored. How did primitive repair methods accomplish this?" Tom smiled as he began to remove the repair chamber. "Sometimes the old ways work best because they're built on basic principles. We didn't try to fight your ship's quantum nature. We just gave it the tools it needed to repair itself, like putting a bandage on a cut. The rest of Ray's crew had moved closer now, all of them examining the repair with what seemed like disbelief. Their forms were creating a light show of colors that made the repair bay look like a disco. "This is just the first small section," Tom reminded them. "We had a lot more work to do. But now we know it works." Ray turned to Tom, his crystalline form glowing with what could only be described as joy. "You don't understand what you've accomplished. This repair method, it's so simple, yet it works with the quantum field instead of against it. No one has ever managed that before." Tom just shrugged and started preparing for the next section. "That's the thing about humans," he said. "We don't always understand why something works. We just know when it does." The success of the first repair didn't last long. 3 hours into fixing the second major crack, everything went wrong. "Temperature spike," Amanda shouted from her control station. The repair chamber was glowing bright red, definitely not the cool blue they wanted. The new batch of resin wasn't just failing to bond, it was bubbling and smoking. "Shut it down," Tom ordered, already moving toward the emergency controls. "Full containment now." The repair chamber sealed itself automatically as warning alarms blared through the bay. Ray and his crystal crew backed away quickly, their forms flickering with obvious fear. The section they were working on had started to pulse with an angry purple light. Mike rushed to check the readings. "The quantum field is rejecting the resin. It's like it's fighting back." They watched helplessly as the repair area deteriorated. When they finally managed to cool everything down and remove the chamber, the damage was even worse than before. The crack had grown to twice its original size, and the surrounding crystal was discolored. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at his team. No one spoke for a moment, but he could see they were all thinking the same thing. They had just made things much worse. "I knew this primitive approach would fail," one of Ray's crew members said, their crystalline form dark with disappointment. "We should leave before you cause more damage." But Ray held up a crystalline appendage for silence. "Wait," he said, moving closer to Tom. "I wish to hear what the humans think went wrong." Tom appreciated Ray's trust, but right now he was wondering the same thing. He walked over to the damage section, pulled out his old magnifying glass again, and started examining the edges of the crack. "Pete," he called out, "what was different about this batch of resin?" The young engineer checked his notes. "We tried to make it stronger by adding more metal powder, thinking it would bond better with the quantum field. And that's where we went wrong," Tom said slowly, realization dawning. "We got cocky, tried to be too clever." He turned to Ray. "Your ship's quantum field doesn't need stronger resin. It needs flexible resin. We made it too rigid." Mike snapped his fingers. "Of course. The first batch worked because it was softer, letting the quantum field adjust it. This batch tried to force the crystal to adapt to it instead." Tom nodded. "All right, let's start over. Pete, mix up a new batch, but this time make it more flexible than the first one. Amanda, recalibrate the chamber for lower temperatures. Mike, help me set up containment barriers in case this goes wrong too." Ray's crew watched with increasing interest as the humans quickly reorganized and started preparing for another attempt. "You're going to try again," one of them asked, "after such a failure?" "Of course," Tom said, not looking up from his work. "That's how humans learn. We fail, we figure out why, and we try again. Sometimes we have to fail a few times to get it right." The next attempt wasn't perfect either. The resin was too soft this time, and wouldn't hold its shape. The third try resulted in weird quantum fluctuations that made everyone's hair stand on end. But with each failure, they learned something new. By the seventh attempt, they had it figured out. The resin needed to be just the right balance of flexible and stable, and the temperature had to be adjusted based on the quantum field's strength in each specific area. It wasn't an exact science. It required a feel for the work that only came from experience. "Look at that," Mike said proudly as they removed the chamber from their latest repair. The crack was gone, and the quantum field was flowing smoothly through the repaired section, maybe even better than before. Ray's entire crew had gathered around, their crystalline forms glowing with amazement. "We would have given up after the first failure," Ray admitted. "Our species, we expect perfection. We don't know how to learn from mistakes." Tom smiled as he started gathering tools for the next section. "That's humanity's secret weapon," he said. "We're really good at being bad at things. At least at first. But we keep trying until we get it right." He looked at the long list of repairs still to do on the massive crystal ship. "We've got the method down now, but each section will be a little different. We'll probably run into more problems." "More opportunities to learn," Ray corrected him, and Tom could have sworn the alien's crystalline form was trying to smile. 3 days into repairing the crystal ship, the team hit a wall. They'd fixed most of the outer hull cracks, but deep inside the ship, something was still wrong. The quantum field kept fluctuating in ways they couldn't explain. "It's like there's an echo," Tom said, staring at the readings. "We fix one crack, but the energy bounces around and starts new ones somewhere else." The repair bay had become their temporary home. Empty coffee cups and food wrappers littered the workstations. Even Ray and his crew hadn't left, watching the humans work with growing fascination. That's when Lucy, one of their newest technicians who usually worked the night shift, walked in. She stopped and stared at the crystal ship for a long moment, her head tilted to one side. "You know," she said quietly, "this reminds me of my mom's old glass wind chimes." Tom turned to her, dark circles under his eyes. "Wind chimes." Lucy walked closer to the ship, her eyes following the patterns of light flowing through the crystal structure. "Yeah. When one chime cracked, it would mess up the whole sound. You couldn't just fix the crack. You had to retune all the pieces to work together again." The repair bay went quiet. Tom and Mike looked at each other, then back at Lucy. "The quantum field," Mike whispered. "We've been treating each crack separately, but the whole ship is one big crystal," Tom finished. "One big instrument that needs to be in tune with itself." Lucy nodded. "In the chimes, if you didn't get the harmony right, the vibrations would just cause more cracks over time." Ray moved forward, his crystalline form bright with interest. "Our ships are designed to channel quantum energy in specific harmonics. Could the repairs be disrupting these patterns?" Tom was already moving to the control panel. "Amanda, can you show me the quantum field readings for the whole ship at once? Not just the broken sections." The main screen lit up with a complex pattern of energy flows. Looking at the whole ship at once, they could finally see it. The repairs they'd made were slightly different from the original crystal structure. Each small difference was creating tiny disruptions in the quantum field. "It's like we've been replacing parts of a song with notes that are slightly out of key," Lucy said, looking at the pattern. "The whole melody is getting confused." "But how do we fix that?" Pete asked. "We can't unrepair the cracks." Lucy pulled out her phone and played a video of wind chimes singing in perfect harmony. "We don't need to. We just need to tune the repairs we've made to match the ship's natural frequency." Tom turned to Ray. "Is there a way to adjust the quantum resonance in the repaired sections?" "Yes," Ray said, his form pulsing with excitement. "But it would require precise control of the quantum field. Our tools are too powerful. They would overwhelm the delicate adjustments needed." Tom smiled. "Good thing we like working with simple tools, then." They spent the next 12 hours building what looked like a giant tuning fork, modified with quantum sensors. Lucy led the work, using her knowledge of musical harmonics to guide them. They moved from section to section, carefully adjusting the quantum resonance of each repair until it matched the ship's natural frequency. The effect was immediate. The quantum field stabilized, flowing smoothly through both the original crystal and the repaired sections. The whole ship seemed to hum with a subtle vibration that felt right. Ray and his crew were floating excitedly around the ship, their forms blazing with bright colors. "The harmony is perfect," Ray exclaimed. "The quantum field is actually stronger than before." "How did you know?" Tom looked at Lucy, who was still watching the energy patterns with a small smile. "Sometimes the answers come from unexpected places. We just have to be willing to listen." "Listen to wind chimes," one of Ray's crew said, trying to understand. "To fix a quantum crystal ship. That's how humans solve problems," Tom explained. "We take what we know from one thing and apply it to another. Sometimes the simplest solutions come from the most unexpected places." As the repair team began cleaning up their tools, Tom could hear the subtle hum of the crystal ship, now singing in perfect harmony. It was a reminder that even in the age of quantum ships and alien technology, there was still room for simple wisdom and a fresh perspective. Lucy's wind chime insight had done more than fix one ship. It had shown them how to make their repairs even better by working with the natural properties of the materials instead of against them. 2 weeks after fixing Ray's crystal ship, Earth Repair Station Alpha was busier than ever. Word had spread fast through the galactic communication networks. Tom stood in his office, watching 3 new alien ships waiting their turn to dock. "Another quantum drive failure from the Centauri sector," Mike said, walking in with a fresh stack of repair requests. "And 2 more crystal ships with stress fractures. Everyone wants the human touch now." Tom couldn't help but smile. The office walls, once bare, were now covered with strange alien thank you gifts. Ray's crew had left behind a beautiful crystal sculpture that changed colors based on people's emotions. The station's communication system buzzed. "Chief," Amanda's voice came through. "We've got an interesting one coming in. It's a living ship." Tom almost dropped his coffee mug. Living ships were legendary, biological vessels grown rather than built. They were known to be almost impossible to repair if damaged. "What's wrong with it?" he asked. "They say it's got digestive problems," Amanda replied, trying not to laugh. "Apparently, it's not processing fuel properly." Mike raised his eyebrows. "So now we're space veterinarians." "We'll figure it out," Tom said confidently. That was the station's new motto. They'd figure it out, whatever it was. The living ship arrived later that day. It looked like a giant whale made of metal and organic tissue. Its captain, a tall insect-like being, explained that 3 other repair stations had already given up. "We heard about how you fixed the quantum crystal ship," the captain clicked through the translator. "They said you humans think differently." Tom gathered his team for inspection. Lucy immediately noticed that the ship's outer membrane pulsed in a rhythm similar to her wind chimes. Pete remembered how his aunt's farm animals acted when they had stomach problems. Even the station's cafeteria cook, Bob, pitched in with ideas about digestion and energy conversion. They ended up fixing the living ship with a mixture of probiotics modified for space use and simple mechanical adjustments to its fuel intake system. The ship actually purred when they finished, a sound that made everyone's teeth vibrate. As that ship left, 5 more arrived. Each brought new challenges. A ship made of pure energy with pattern disruptions, an ancient vessel running on forgotten technology, even a ship that traveled through time and had gotten stuck partially in next Tuesday. "We're going to need a bigger repair bay," Tom said, reviewing the growing wait list. The station had already hired 20 new engineers and technicians, but they could use 50 more. What amazed him most was how each successful repair led to new discoveries. The crystal ship repairs had taught them about harmony and resonance. The living ship showed them how mechanical and biological systems could work together. Each problem solved made them better at solving the next one. One afternoon, a group of alien engineers asked permission to observe the repair teams at work. They were fascinated by how humans approached problems. "You try things that make no sense," one observer noted, watching Lucy use musical tones to diagnose a quantum field disruption. "You combine technologies that should not work together. You use old methods alongside new ones. It's chaotic." "But it works," Tom replied simply. The station's reputation grew so much that they had to start teaching their methods to other repair stations. Tom found himself giving lectures about the human approach to universal repairs to audiences of alien engineers who had thousands of years of advanced technological experience. The key, he would tell them, is to forget what you think is impossible. Look at the problem with fresh eyes. Use what you know from everyday life. And most importantly, don't be afraid to fail a few times before you succeed. By the end of the month, Earth Repair Station Alpha had become the busiest repair facility in this arm of the galaxy. Ships would travel hundreds of light years just to get their human-style repairs. The station's waiting room had become a fascinating mix of species and technologies. Crystal beings chatted with energy forms while living ships hummed quietly in their special docking bays, all of them waiting for humans, the galaxy's new repair experts, to fix their problems with that special mix of old wisdom, new ideas, and simple human stubbornness. You know what's funny? Mike said one day, watching the busy repair bays, "We became the best not because we knew the most, but because we were willing to know the least." Tom nodded. Sometimes not knowing something was impossible was the first step to making it possible. 1 year after the first crystal ship repair, Earth Repair Station Alpha had transformed beyond recognition. The once modest station now sprawled across space like a giant spider web, with dozens of repair bays handling everything from quantum ships to living vessels. Tom stood in his new office, looking out at the busy repair yards through a window made of the same quantum crystal they'd learned to fix. It was a gift from Ray's people, now their strongest allies in the galactic community. "Chief," Amanda called over the intercom, "you've got some visitors. I think you'll want to see this." When Tom reached the main reception area, he found a familiar crystalline form waiting for him. Ray had returned, but he wasn't alone. Behind him floated 3 of the most distinguished-looking crystal beings Tom had ever seen. "Station Chief Miller," Ray's form glowed warmly. "I've brought the High Council of Crystal Technologies to meet you. They didn't believe my reports about human repair methods." The council members' forms shimmered with what Tom had learned to recognize as curiosity and slight skepticism. The tallest one spoke first. "We have reviewed the data from all the crystal ships repaired here. The results are impossible. Yet they exist. We wish to understand." Tom smiled and gestured toward the teaching bay, where Lucy was showing a group of alien engineers how to use modified wind chimes to test quantum harmonics. In another bay, Pete was demonstrating their new resin mixing technique to a crowd of fascinated observers. "There's nothing special about our methods," Tom explained as they walked. "We just never forgot the simple things while learning the complex ones." The council members watched in silence as human technicians worked alongside alien apprentices. In one bay, they were fixing a time-displaced engine using principles borrowed from old pocket watches. In another, they were treating a living ship's illness with a mixture of advanced medicine and old-fashioned chicken soup, modified for space use, of course. "This defies all conventional wisdom," one council member noted. "You solve quantum problems with primitive tools. You fix living ships using recipes from your kitchens. You repair time distortions using techniques from mechanical clocks." "That's because humans don't see them as primitive tools," Ray interjected. "To them, they're just tools. Everything is useful if it works." They reached the main repair floor just as a new ship was arriving. Another crystal vessel, but unlike any they'd seen before. Its entire structure was riddled with cracks, but it was still flying. The ship's captain, a young crystal being, emerged looking embarrassed. I tried to repair it myself, using what I learned from studying human methods. I failed, but you got it here in one piece," Tom finished, already examining the unique repair pattern. "And you learned something new, didn't you?" The young captain's form brightened. "Yes, the cracks should have torn the ship apart, but I remembered what you taught about harmonics and used the crystal's natural resonance to hold it together." The council members' forms flickered with surprise. Here was something new, not just humans solving problems, but their methods spreading and evolving. Later that day, in a ceremony that was broadcast across the galaxy, the Council officially recognized Earth Repair Station Alpha as the galaxy's premier center for innovative repair technologies. But the real victory wasn't in the fancy title. "Look there," Tom said to Mike, pointing at a group of young aliens and humans working together, sharing both advanced theories and practical tricks. "That's our real legacy." Mike nodded. "We're not just fixing ships anymore. We're fixing how people think about fixing things." The station had become more than a repair facility. It was a meeting point between the old and the new, the simple and the complex. Humans had found their place in the galaxy, not by having the most advanced technology, but by remembering that every tool, every method, and every idea had value if used wisely. As Tom watched a young human engineer teach a crystal being how to use a simple magnifying glass to spot quantum fractures, while nearby an alien energy being showed a veteran mechanic how to sense temporal distortions, he realized something important. They hadn't just built a repair station. They'd built a bridge between worlds, connecting different species, technologies, and ways of thinking. And every day, that bridge grew stronger. "What's next?" Mike asked, looking at the endless stream of ships waiting for repair. Tom smiled, pulling out his old magnifying glass. "We'll figure it out. We always do."